When she came to herself, or when Miss Betsy had restored her, whichever it was, she found the latter standing at the window. The twilight was by this time shading down to darkness, and dimly as they saw each other, they could not have done that without the aid of the fire. "Well," said Miss Betsy, coming back to her chair, as if she had only been taking a casual look at the prospect, "and when do you expect—" "Oh, I am all a tremble," faltered my mother. "I don't know what's the matter. I shall die, I am sure." "Oh, no, no, no," said Miss Betsy. "Have some tea." "Oh, dear me, do you think it will do me any good?" cried my mother in a helpless manner. "Of course it will," said Miss Betsy. "It's nothing but fancy. What do you call your girl?" "I don't know that it will be a girl yet, ma'am," said my mother innocently. "Oh, bless the baby!" exclaimed Miss Betsy, unconsciously quoting the second sentiment of the pincushion in the drawer upstairs, but applying it to my mother instead of me. "I don't mean that. I mean your servant girl." "Peggotty," said my mother. "Peggotty?" repeated Miss Betsy with some indignation. "Do you mean to say, child, that any human being has gone into a Christian church and got herself named Peggotty?" "It's her surname," said my mother faintly. "Mr. Copperfield called her by it because her Christian name was the same as mine." "Here, Peggotty," cried Miss Betsy, opening the parlour door. "Tea, your mistress is a little unwell. Don't dawdle." Having issued this mandate with as much potentiality as if she had been a recognized authority in the house ever since it had been a house, and having looked out to confront the amazed Peggotty coming along the passage with a candle at the sound of a strange voice, Miss Betsy shut the door again and sat down as before, with her feet on the fender, the skirt of her dress tucked up, and her hands folded on one knee. "You were speaking about its being a girl," said Miss Betsy. "I have no doubt it will be a girl. I have a presentiment that it must be a girl. Now, child, from the moment of the birth of this girl—" "Perhaps boy," my mother took the liberty of putting in. "I tell you I have a presentiment that it must be a girl," returned Miss Betsy. "Don't contradict. From the moment of this girl's birth, child, I intend to be her friend. I intend to be her godmother, and I beg you'll call her Betsy Trotwood Copperfield. There must be no mistakes in the life of this Betsy Trotwood. There must be no trifling with her affections, poor dear. She must be well brought up, and well guarded from reposing any foolish confidences where they are not deserved. I must make that my care." There was a twitch of Miss Betsy's head after each of these sentences, as if her own old wrongs were working within her, and she repressed any plainer reference to them by strong constraint. So my mother suspected at least, as she observed her by the low glimmer of the fire. Too much scared by Miss Betsy, too uneasy in herself, and too subdued and bewildered altogether to observe anything very clearly, or to know what to say. "And was David good to you, child?" asked Miss Betsy, when she had been silent for a little while, and these motions of her head had gradually ceased. "Were you comfortable together?" "We were very happy," said my mother. "Mr. Copperfield was only too good to me." "Well, he spoilt you, I suppose," returned Miss Betsy. "For being quite alone and dependent on myself in this rough world again. Yes, I fear he did indeed," sobbed my mother. "Well, don't cry," said Miss Betsy. "You were not equally matched, child, if any two people can be equally matched. And so I asked the question. You were an orphan, weren't you?" "Yes." "And a governess?" "I was a nursery governess in a family where Mr. Copperfield came to visit. Mr. Copperfield was very kind to me, and took a great deal of notice of me, and paid me a good deal of attention, and at last proposed to me, and I accepted him, and so we were married," said my mother simply. "Ah, poor baby," mused Miss Betsy, with her frown still bent upon the fire. "Do you know anything—" "I beg your pardon, ma'am," faltered my mother. "About keeping house, for instance," said Miss Betsy. "Not much, I fear," returned my mother. "Not so much as I could wish. But Mr. Copperfield was teaching me." "Much he knew about it himself," said Miss Betsy in a parenthesis. and I hope I should have improved, being very anxious to learn, and he very patient to teach me. If the great misfortune of his death—" My mother broke down again here, and could get no farther. "Well, well," said Miss Betsy, "I kept my housekeeping book regularly, and balanced it with Mr. Copperfield every night," cried my mother in another burst of distress, and breaking down again. "Well, well," said Miss Betsy, "don't cry any more. And I am sure we never had a word of difference respecting it, except when Mr. Copperfield objected to my 3s and 5s being too much like each other, or to my putting curly tails to my 7s and 9s, resumed my mother in another burst, and breaking down again. "You'll make yourself ill," said Miss Betsy, "and you know that will not be good either for you or for my goddaughter. Come, you mustn't do it." This argument had some share in quieting my mother, though her increasing indisposition had a larger one. There was an interval of silence, only broken by Miss Betsy's occasionally ejaculating "Ha!" as she sat with her feet upon the fender. "David had bought an annuity for himself with his money, I know," said she by and by. "What did he do for you?" "Mr. Copperfield," said my mother, answering with some difficulty, "was so considerate and good as to secure the reversion of a part of it to me." "How much?" asked Miss Betsy. £105 a year," said my mother. "He might have done worse," said my aunt. The word was appropriate to the moment. My mother was so much worse that Peggotty, coming in with the tea-board and candles, and seeing at a glance how ill she was, as Miss Betsy might have done sooner if there had been light enough, conveyed her upstairs to her own room with all speed, and immediately dispatched Ham Peggotty, her nephew, who had been for some days past secreted in the house, unknown to my mother, as a special messenger in case of emergency, to fetch the nurse and doctor. Those allied powers were considerably astonished when they arrived within a few minutes of each other, to find an unknown lady of portentous appearance sitting before the fire with her bonnet tied over her left arm, stopping her ears with jeweller's cotton. Peggotty knowing nothing about her, and my mother saying nothing about her, she was quite a mystery in the parlour, and the fact of her having a magazine of jeweller's cotton in her pocket and sticking the article in her ears in that way did not detract from the solemnity of her presence. The doctor, having been upstairs and come down again, and having satisfied himself, I suppose, that there was a probability of this unknown lady and himself having to sit there face to face for some hours, laid himself out to be polite and social. He was the meekest of his sex, the mildest of little men. He sidled in and out of a room to take up the less space. He walked as softly as the ghost in Hamlet, and more slowly. He carried his head on one side, partly in modest deprecation of himself, partly in modest propitiation of everybody else. It is nothing to say that he hadn't a word to throw at a dog. He couldn't have thrown a word at a mad dog. He might have offered him one gently, or half a one, or a fragment of one, for he spoke as slowly as he walked. But he wouldn't have been rude to him, and he couldn't have been quick with him for any earthly consideration. Mr. Chillip, looking mildly at my aunt with his head on one side, and making her a little bow, said in allusion to the jeweller's cotton, as he softly touched his left ear, "Some local irritation, ma'am." "What?" replied my aunt, pulling the cotton out of one ear like a cork. Mr. Chillip was so alarmed by her abruptness, as he told my mother afterwards, that it was a mercy he didn't lose his presence of mind, but he repeated sweetly, "Some local irritation, ma'am." "Nonsense," replied my aunt, and corked herself up again at one blow. Mr. Chillip could do nothing after this, but sit and look at her feebly, as she sat and looked at the fire, until he was called upstairs again. After some quarter of an hour's absence he returned. "Well," said my aunt, taking the cotton out of the ear nearest to him. "Well, ma'am," returned Mr. Chillip, we are progressing slowly, ma'am." "Bah!" said my aunt, with a perfect shake on the contemptuous interjection, and corked herself as before. "Really, Really, as Mr. Chillip told my mother, he was almost shocked. Speaking in a professional point of view alone, he was almost shocked. But he sat and looked at her, notwithstanding, for nearly 2 hours, as she sat looking at the fire, until he was again called out. After another absence, he again returned. "Well," said my aunt, taking the cotton out of that side again. "Well, ma'am," returned Mr. Chillip, we are progressing slowly, ma'am." "Ah!" said my aunt, with such a snarl at him that Mr. Chillip absolutely could not bear it. It was really calculated to break his spirit, he said afterwards. He preferred to go and sit upon the stairs in the dark and in a strong draught until he was again sent for. Ham Peggotty, who went to the National School, and was a very dragon at his catechism, and who may therefore be regarded as a credible witness, reported next day that, happening to peep in at the parlour door an hour after this, he was instantly descried by Miss Betsy, then walking to and fro in a state of agitation, and pounced upon before he could make his escape. That there were now occasional sounds of feet and voices overhead, which he inferred the cotton did not exclude, from the circumstance of his evidently being clutched by the lady as a victim on whom to expend her superabundant agitation when the sounds were loudest. That, marching him constantly up and down by the collar, as if he had been taking too much laudanum, she at those times shook him, rumpled his hair, made light of his linen, stopped his ears as if she confounded them with her own, and otherwise touzled and maltreated him. This was in part confirmed by his aunt, who saw him at 12:30 o'clock, soon after his release, and affirmed that he was then as red as I was. The mild Mr. Chillip could not possibly bear malice at such a time, if at any time. He sidled into the parlour as soon as he was at liberty, and said to my aunt in his meekest manner, "Well, ma'am, I am happy to congratulate you." "Upon what?" said my aunt sharply. Mr. Chillip was fluttered again by the extreme severity of my aunt's manner, so he made her a little bow, and gave her a little smile to mollify her. "Mercy upon the man, what's he doing?" cried my aunt impatiently. "Can't he speak?" "Be calm, my dear ma'am," said Mr. Chillip in his softest accents. "There is no longer any occasion for uneasiness, ma'am. Be calm." It has since been considered almost a miracle that my aunt didn't shake him, and shake what he had to say out of him. She only shook her own head at him, but in a way that made him quail. "Well, ma'am," resumed Mr. Chillip as soon as he had courage, "I am happy to congratulate you. All is over now, ma'am, and well over." During the 5 minutes or so that Mr. Chillip devoted to the delivery of this oration, my aunt eyed him narrowly. "How is she?" said my aunt, folding her arms with her bonnet still tied on one of them. "Well, ma'am, she will soon be quite comfortable, I hope," returned Mr. Chillip. "Quite as comfortable as we can expect a young mother to be under these melancholy domestic circumstances. There cannot be any objection to your seeing her presently, ma'am. It may do her good." "And she, how is she?" said my aunt sharply. Mr. Chillip laid his head a little more on one side, and looked at my aunt like an amiable bird. "The baby," said my aunt, "how is she?" "Ma'am," returned Mr. Chillip, "I apprehended you had known. It's a boy." My aunt never said a word. She took her bonnet by the strings in the manner of a sling, aimed a blow at Mr. Chillip's head with it, put it on, bent, walked out, and never came back. She vanished like a discontented fairy, or like one of those supernatural beings whom it was popularly supposed I was entitled to see, and never came back any more. No, I lay in my basket, and my mother lay in her bed, but Betsy Trotwood Copperfield was forever in the land of dreams and shadows, the tremendous region whence I had so lately travelled, and the light upon the window of our room shone out upon the earthly bourne of all such travellers, and the mound above the ashes and the dust that was once he, without whom I had never been. End of chapter 1.